Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me tonight. Um, we are going to do some cool watercolor illustration um, using watercolor paint, watercolor brushes, and 2 jars of regular tap water. This one's going to be for my dirty water, and this is going to be my clean water, and watercolor paper. Alright, so the first thing I do is what I want to do is I want to create like this cool little sunset wash. Wash means that I'm gonna get some water, put it on the paper, and then I'm gonna get some paint and then drop it on here, and the watercolor, it's just gonna spread very nicely. I will show you in a moment. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is get some water and just put it on my watercolor wells. I want to activate them. Just drop some in there. A lot of times when I see students using watercolor, they treat it like if it was acrylic, and they want to just be able to get a whole bunch of paint and drop it on the paper. But the way that this works is that you use most of the paint is actually with the water. So that's why you want to wet it. Okay. Like that, and also have a rag so that you could just wipe your brush. You don't want to have too much water on your brush. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to add some water onto my paper, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to get a big brush. It's always good to have like a really big brush. Doesn't have to be expensive, something pretty cheap, and just like wet it, just add water to it, and this will make it much easier when I'm applying water like this. It's hard to see, but if you move your paper, like if you rotate it like this, you're able to see where the water is. Okay. Okay, that's pretty good. So now what I want to do is get another big brush, not as big as the last one, but pretty big. This is a number 12. And I think I want to start off with like a nice little yellow or something. And also, whenever you use watercolors, there's always like these pieces of plastic attached to it, especially when you open like the Crayola brand, you open your watercolor palettes, and then you're gonna have a side, the lid that actually is meant for you to mix your colors there. So I just add a lot of water, and you're gonna notice that once I drop it in there, it's going to spread. And this is just my initial layer. Like this. It doesn't matter what color you use. I use just the random colors. There's warm colors and there's cool colors. Warm colors are like a red, a brown, a yellow. Cool colors are like a blue, a purple, a green. So I want my background to be kind of warm, like towards the bottom part of it where the sun's gonna be. And then towards the top, I want it to start getting kind of cool. So I'm gonna get some of this green. And if you don't have green already made, it's easy to make. It's just yellow and blue. And I'm gonna mix it in with the same color I was using right now. Like that. Maybe a little bit of blue on here. Like this. I want a little bit more yellow on the bottom, like where the sun would be. It's gonna be like an early morning. So what I use is try to get some photo reference, take a picture when you go hiking, when you go to the park, and just take pictures with your phone and get inspired. A lot of times when I go out hiking, I look out in the distance and then I see like a cool sunset or like the silhouette of the trees, and I'll take a picture of it and I'll use it later for a painting or something, or just get inspired. Okay, so I'm gonna clean my water right here. Okay, so if you could find a little mist, whatever, I don't know what it's called, but it creates like a little bit of mist, like a spray bottle actually. Get a little spray bottle and fill it up with water, and it'll help you kind of diffuse some of that paint. I'm gonna add like a little bit of kind of like foliage in the foreground. Let it mix a little bit. Like that. If something is really bright in the background, then anything in the foreground, what's in front of you, is going to be darker. Same thing the other way around. If something is very bright in front of you, anything behind it will be darker. So always keep that in mind, especially when you're using watercolors. So my background is going to be very bright. Like it's going to be lighter than the foreground and what's in front of me. So anything that I add to the front, I want it to be darker. And the reason that we want to do that is because that's part of life, that's part of nature, but also you want to be able to separate the background from the foreground. And you could also do that with temperature. As we mentioned before, you have your warm colors and your cool colors. So like if my background is kind of warm, then I want my foreground to be cool. That's just another way to separate. It's called contrast. There's the contrast in temperature, how cool or how warm it is. There's contrast in value, which is light and dark. There's contrast in detail. Things that are in the background, like way in the background, will have a lot less detail than anything that's in the foreground. Right? And it's true in nature. Like you don't you don't look at the mountains. Like if you live in LA, which we all do, or most of us do, you look at the mountains and you just see a shape of the mountain. So that's kind of what we want to do here as well. So I want to have like all these cool like pieces of lawn grass, and I want them all to be kind of like different sizes. Some are taller, some are shorter, and kind of let it blend in with the background as well. Just let it blend in with the background. So I have my jar which will have my dirty water. So all that paint that I don't need, I'm cleaning my brush with it, and then I'll do another pass with my clean water. And this water is the one that we also use to add, to the wells, to activate the colors. We don't want to use dirty water. Okay. I also want to maybe create a little bit more. I'm gonna mist it a little bit and create a little bit more atmosphere. Things that are maybe a little not too detailed, to give it that sensation that that you're somewhere and looking at a sunset. Sometimes like you have some hard edges like this, which are fine, but like let's say if I wanted to get rid of those hard edges, all I got to do is add a little bit of water to it and it'll diffuse it. It'll just blend into the water. Maybe have some like trees in the background. The thing about watercolor too is that everything dries. Like dark colors, when they dry lighter. So keep that in mind. So if something looks very very dark or too saturated with color, like too much color, don't worry, it's gonna get lighter. And this right here, even though it looks like nothing, we're only preparing the scene. We haven't added any detail to it yet. The cool thing about watercolor is that you could always change the color that you've already laid down. Like right here, everything was kind of warm, but now I want to cool it, so I'm using like a bluish color to kind of change the temperature on this. But it also gives it like so much more detail to it. Like there's all these variations of like detail, of temperature, of brush stroke, which makes it look pretty cool, if you ask me. That, okay. I'm gonna probably make like a little cloud over here somewhere. The way to do that is you want to lift the color, meaning that the color that's already applied on the paper, you want to be able to lift it up, remove it. So get some water and then just add it back on here onto the paper, and just rub it and get a clean cloth or whatever, or napkin, and just lift it. And that's kind of how you create those effects. It'll look more obvious if you use a lot of color, but since this is very very light, it's harder to tell. But I just wanted to have just a little hint of atmosphere, of maybe like fog or something. Okay. And then you'll notice also that when you add water to watercolor paper, it'll start buckling, like, you know, it starts having all these buckles of water, of moisture. They'll go away once it dries. Just kind of learn to manage how to do it. There is a way to get rid of it, but that's a whole process in itself. And this is kind of more of a, let's just start painting. Okay, so I want to do some tall grass, some more tall grass, so I'm gonna keep adding layers on top of it. And again, I'm just adding cool colors. There's no scientific method of me combining colors. I'm just looking at my color palette and I'm like, okay, I want this blue, and maybe I'll see what happens if I add some of this color, you know. Sometimes it looks pretty cool, and just go with it. And all I'm doing is, I'm not even, like, I'm just doing this up and down, like up motion with my brush. Sometimes it kind of goes that way, sometimes it goes this way, so it gives it variation. Add some more mist. Okay, it's kind of using the texture of my brush to kind of create some interesting little shapes on here, you know. Little random. There you go. So now I want to get some really dark colors on here, and I'm gonna do the final, kind of the final touch to this. You could still do it with watercolor, or you could use like a marker or an ink to do it, because that'll be the darkest color that you'll get. But right here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get like my darkest colors, which will be blue. If I get blue, I'll get like purple. I'll get this brown color, and I won't add too much water to this. I want it to be more like, the more water you add, the less paint you have in that water. So obviously the less water you have, the more paint you have, and the more saturated it will look. So like right here, I'm gonna just create some leaves coming out from here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe I'm gonna add just a little bit of water, just so that some of them kind of fade to the background a little bit. And then this one, maybe probably put it over here. Another one coming over here. Some of them are kind of like tilting to the side. And if you ever look at how plants, trees, leaves, how they kind of grow. They have branches and they all do their own thing, but they're always kind of going up. When they're too heavy, they'll start coming down. And they're never straight. They kind of always have like a jaggedy edge to it. And then just start adding some leaves. And I'm just using the tip of my brush and just let it create, do its thing with its own texture. With the bristles, it'll just create its own little thing. It don't have to be perfect. Nothing in nature is perfect. Everything just is very unique. They all behave very unique. Everything that grows. You could even add some like color to them. And because these are in the foreground, they have more detail than things that are in the background. And then if you need to mix your color again, just add some more. I mean, the nature of watercolor is that it dries. So you just got to keep adding some more water, mixing them again. It'll give you like little different colors, but it's all right. Okay. I think this is like the most fun part, the one that takes the longest, but it's pretty cool when you see the finished piece. There you go. It's always cool to kind of practice and learn how to use a brush. It's not too difficult. It does take some getting used to, but once you learn how to use a brush, it's going to be your favorite tool. Add some warm color here. Right there. There you go. And it's already giving it like some cool characteristic to this painting. And this is pretty simple because it's just drawing silhouettes, drawing shadows, and using temperature and using brush strokes. If you notice, nothing's really too detailed. Everything's sort of random, but we're thinking about where we could control where that random brushstroke goes and how we want to use it. Maybe we want to have some of that same value on the bottom, right here. Just let the brush do its thing. Just simple strokes upwards. Let me change. Add some more of this. Maybe add some red on there. Just because, no particular reason. Just to give it some variation in color. Experimenting, see how it looks. And now I'm gonna soften this bottom part, and you just add some water and it'll soften it up. I'm still, you know, my brush still has the water from here, from the palette, but come back in with some water. Not too much. You don't want to have too much water on there, but just enough. Maybe using the same paint that I'm lifting, I'll just create some more in the background. Some more of those branches coming up, just to give it some atmosphere, some sense of depth, that it's moving away from us. Got a lot of water on the paint. And that's pretty much it. I want to get some flies or something. So what I'm gonna do to create kind of like all those little insects flying and hovering around the tall grass, this is my favorite part. It does get pretty messy, but it's all good. So I just get some of that same paint on my brush, a little bit of water, and just like, I don't want it to have too much water. You kind of just hit it against your finger. There you go. And it is done. I hope you guys enjoyed this process. You know, it's pretty, you know, it's just cool to create artwork with just simple tools like watercolors, where you could find at Walmart, Target, even the Dollar Tree has some watercolors. You know, just regular brushes and water, and just any thick paper will be perfect for this. Try to find that watercolor paper. You get like a whole stack of them for like $5. And you could just start creating stuff like this. You could frame it, give it to a loved one, and you're good to go. Well, thank you so much for watching, and you know, hopefully I see you guys in the next video. All right, have a good one. Peace.